Good evening, everybody. I'm Antonio Lucero, and with me today is Christopher Jones and Darwin Angeles. We are all um, ConversaCorps, and we operate Aid Arena, which, for those of you who have been following us thus far, Aid Arena is our space to bring humanitarian aid, disaster relief, crisis response, emergency management organizations together into one space to all chat, to coordinate, to share information and knowledge, to get to know each other, and to pre plan for potential responses to disasters. In today's case, and the reason that we're coming to you today is we have Tropical Storm Helene that is making its way through the Caribbean and ultimately heading towards the Florida coast and potentially up to Georgia and even to the Tennessee Valley. Um, Normally, we talk a lot about what Aid Arena can do for these organizations and can do for communities across the globe. Rarely do we have the opportunity to demonstrate for you how we might be able to do that. And so today we have with us Christopher Jones. He is the CEO of ConversaCorps, the founder of Aid Arena. Christopher Jones, he is what we would call a pioneer of collaboration operations. He has worked for many years doing disaster management, crisis management, emergency response type operations. And when he brought this method of collaboration into the humanitarian world a couple of years ago, it seemed like a very far off idea. But here we are, we're executing and we're bringing organizations together and we're trying to help people who want to help people and help the planet. And so with that, Christopher Jones, or Jonesy as we all like to call him, welcome, and Darwin, welcome. Appreciate you guys coming on with me today.
Thanks, Antonio.
Appreciate being
Um,
asked to be on here.
right. So yeah, this is a good platform. I like this live stream concept. I think this is going to be a good way to show you guys a little bit of what we have going on. Talking first of all about what's happening this week with Hurricane Helene. These are just the kinds of national, international crisis events that we stood up ConversaCorps to support, which was to enable those who are reacting and responding to provide help to people, the planet, and animals, and everything like that in these crisis events to coordinate with each other better using basically group chat. And so that's the service that we provide. So we've built up the services, the tools, and we just happen to have a good event this week to demonstrate how people can actually work together and share information rapidly. These are between the teams doing the responding. So luckily we can stream it today and demonstrate the spaces we've built in Slack. That's the tool we're using. There's lots of tool choices out there, but we selected Slack for several reasons, and we can go into those later. But we wanted to show you the kinds of people that are showing up at these things. What do they talk about? And we did not really dictate exactly what they need to say this week. They just kind of went at it. So we're going to show that to you.
And
And
when we talk about when we're talking about these organizations, I think it's important that we point out that some of these organizations are your recognized professional organizations, your Team Rubicons, your World Central Kitchens. You know, we even have people from
Mhm.
NOAA, from NASA. I mean, there's a whole plethora of well-known organizations, and then there's also some that are maybe a little bit less known, such as Ground
Mhm.
Force Humanitarian Aid, who are in this space, this Aid Arena Slack space, and they're sharing information and they're coordinating, and it's really a sight to see once you understand what's happening. It's kind of beautiful in a sense to see what's going on.
It's
Mhm.
it's almost it's almost a miracle in certain ways that with as many organizations that are in Aid Arena, that there is a discernible amount of order in the chaos. Um, because for the uninitiated, it may look like just a massive blur of activity and then silence, and it's like, wait, well, you got to pick everything apart. And yet there is value in that because you create a central space for people to be able to look back and go, oh, this is happening. I need to say something about it. I need to
Mhm.
contribute something about it. Yeah, it is much nicer in the sense that, you know, for units on the ground, obviously telecom is a factor, but for people who are a little bit further behind the front line of the help that's being done, to be able to provide some amount of information to other responding teams and then help each other discover each other and then work together and problem solve together, that's, you know, that's where the money's made, I guess.
It is. I mean, just with Hurricane Francine last week and the week before, we were able to bring some organizations in that started coordinating here, and that ultimately resulted in more than 12,000 meals delivered to people who were affected by that storm. So it's an exciting thing when you can literally watch others helping others, but then know that you're enabling that. And so that's what keeps me excited about this. So, Jonesy, why don't you kind of take us around and show us what we have going on here?
That was good. So this is the Slack platform I got up right now. And so think about Slack as a lot of channels in group chat by topic, and that's how we kind of break it up. But it's all within these groupings of channels that Slack calls workspaces. And these workspaces are where basically you can have, they're built for, this is a commercial tool, right? So they're built for companies to have your company Slack workspace, and all your channels are just for the company. We like to have it wide open. Here's why. Because our experience in this when it comes to crisis over about 25 years of doing this is that when you have channels where you get in once, but you can now browse across many different topics, that's when you get this really great discovery happening between people. Like, I didn't know I need to be in that room. That looks like a pretty interesting topic. And now you join that conversation and off you go. You start to make new friends and things like that. So we have these spaces over here. I'm just going to click on the Aid Arena. This is the name of the workspace we set up as our primary workspace for lots of different groups working on lots of different topics. For example, we have like topics like food, environment, logistics, nutrition, protection, technology, training, all the kinds of things that would probably be relevant topics for those who are responding to an event. And the premise is you apply to ask to be part of our workspace because we have to invite you in. And when you're in, basically we say, hey, go ahead, start introducing yourself, get to know each other, and see what's happening here. So these are all channels will start lighting up throughout the day. And we set up some for Helene, this Tropical Storm Helene channel, for example. Let me show you that we got about 49 people in here right now. You can easily see who's who in the zoo by their names and who they work for. So that's one kind of quick way to get to know who's who here. But the idea is you basically go down through these messages here and people just start posting in messages. We're not moderating it like you have to ask for permission before you post this. You just post right away what you're seeing. And we trust that everyone in here is trying to do good things to share. Like, for example, our user Skippy here put in the Kennard Volunteer Fire Department information that you just saw on Facebook, just posted in here. That's common situational awareness now that everyone is able to see. So that common situational awareness is kind of what this is all about. But it isn't like, it's not like a report everyone reads. It's live chat. So I can just reply here, thanks. That's the kind of interaction we want, is that personal interaction between people. We want people to get to know each other, by their name eventually. So as you go to these channels here, you can scroll up and scroll back and back and back, and it's all kind of a continuous log of what's going on. Sometimes when you're in tools like WhatsApp or Signal or SMS text, if you come into the channel during its conversation, you may have missed out on the previous stuff. So we do that all in here, like I was asking earlier today, where who's going to deploy where. We get a nice little thread of conversation between Team Rubicon and Operation Barbecue Relief and those things in this thing called thread. There's other tools within this Slack tool that lets you kind of organize information. Like we have canvases that let us show basically information that's more static about a channel. We can do lists, like we have a list here for the needs. Yeah, my list is not showing up. It's in a separate window. Hold on.
Yeah, they do end up
No.
opening in another window, which is in some ways nice, in other ways a little like, oh man.
Yeah, you can click and drag it over if you'd like to show
Yeah, I might end up doing that. Hold on.
it.
So the idea is that these lists are just basically like workflow tools that let you manage things
So,
within this.
and
Mhm.
I think it's important to jump in here and say that these capabilities of this platform are what changes from using some of the traditional methods of collaboration, right? Some of your what we refer to as asynchronous, meaning it's not a live environment. Somebody puts a page up with a couple of comments or maybe a couple of files, Word documents, and then other people might get to those and leave comments at a later point. This kind of makes it all a one-stop shop for us and for all of our partner organizations who are coming in and they're saying, okay, for instance, with Ground Force, they have a safe camp and they're posting where they're going to have the safe camp. And then they post what their volunteer needs are. We're looking for 35 volunteers to come help us deliver meals to these affected communities. And all of that can be tracked here in one space. You only have to say things one time and everybody can see that. So, just for example, in the response tips room that you're in right now, in that room on its own, there are about 45 individuals. In the tropical storm Helene room, there's another 50 individuals. In total, throughout our spaces here in 8 Arena, we have over 200 people representing roughly about 100 different organizations, and they are all able to be contacted and notified simply by saying something one time. There's no copy and pasting emails. There's no building distro lists, adding to distro lists. No worry about conference calls and everything else. It's all right here. And I think that that's what is the beauty of what you're showing. So, you know, you have a Jim Holt like on your screen right now who's reposting at least 3,000 members of the National Guard are ready to assist, you know, with the storm efforts. And then just below that, you have Darwin talking about how Terry, you know, was posted about SAR teams. And so we're literally covering all the different topics from remote sensing and tracking of the storms and of personnel, which can then translate over to search and rescue, to people just trying to deliver food and water and help people that are just affected. You know, power outages are a thing. So there's people that work in the energy sector. And it's really kind of great because in all of these sectors, we don't have to worry inside of the 8 Arena space about hierarchies. You don't have to have permission to talk. You don't have to have permission to ask questions. There is no shame in asking questions. Um, there's no real script to this. It's all happening live and it's all happening as people see fit. So if I have something or anybody else has something that they feel is important to say or to ask, there's pieces of information that are missing. This is where you go. And what's really great is, you know, you see the Hurricane Francine channel right there on your screen. Just below it, you see a couple of response general and introductions channels. You see the Tropical Storm Helene channel. So everything is named appropriately where you know where to find the crowd you're looking for. So if I'm just trying to introduce myself and hope to find somebody who is also working in the same style of organization that I'm in, I go to the introductions channel. If I'm here because I want to talk about, coordinate with others for Tropical Storm Helene, I go right into the Tropical Storm Helene channel. And these channels aren't private, they're not restricted in any way, shape, or form. So all of our members can come here and this is where they participate. And these all things, you see it at the top of your screen there. It says Tropical Storm Helene, all things related to Tropical Storm Helene. And so you'll see people posting sheriff's warnings, evacuation orders, you know, they're posting news updates, everything that they can, anything that's relevant to the effort to respond and protect these communities, but then also help these communities after this storm hits. And we all know that this storm is coming on Thursday. We don't know how big it is. or how big it will be when it hits landfall. We do know that some of the experts are pointing towards a pretty strong storm with a very, very large land base. And that could be pretty devastating for some of these communities. So seeing that we already have, 20 plus organizations coming together to share information before the storm even gets there means that not only us, but those that are helping the communities prepare for this are going to be way better prepared than you would without this.
And I think one of the other important things to sort of keep in mind is that, like, if you look at where I'm listed here right now on the screen, it talks about me as a facilitator and also a tech facilitator. I think the most important thing to sort of point out here is that, like, there are people in this space whose sole purpose is to ensure connections are made. You know, when I first joined and I started learning about what was going on here, my first question was like, well, aren't we just moderators? And it's like, no. And there's a specific reason why there's the avoidance of the word moderator, because it makes it feel like we're passive and we're just like watching what everybody says. And if they say something wrong, boom, we drop the hammer. It's like, no, that's not our job. Our job in a certain way is to not just take this in, like, be a place to receive this information, a place to drop this information, but to help introduce people who didn't realize they needed to be introduced to. Introduce those people to pieces of information and data and resources that they didn't have before. Our job isn't to moderate the conversation, it's to facilitate the conversation, which I think is a genius play on the word.
Yeah, I'll show that here, right? This is an innocuous question to most, right? Beings, where are you planning to deploy? I need an update. Basically, we call it stirring the drink a little bit. So if, and that the leading up to this, I knew that we had representation from these four groups, at least in our space here, but they weren't necessarily in quite a while now. They haven't shared what's going on, their latest plans. So this is just I call it the dumb question, right? Ask the dumb question out there and get them to respond. And what it produced was a nice little thread from the different groups as to what their status is. And so we do that because the natural habit of some folks when they go into group chat is to think I'm here just to watch and I'll respond to any question that's asked to me, but I will watch and wait. Well, if everyone did that, can you imagine how quiet the space would be,
It's
right?
the same thing as the
So that's
bystander effect. You just, like, you're waiting
absolutely.
to be prompted.
Yeah, so think about a host at a party who walks around and her job is to make sure that that person standing alone in the corner is able to meet somebody else. Like, let me introduce you to so-and-so over here, get that conversation going. Those are the kind of link ups we want to make happen because you want people to get into that mode where they start to trust each other. And I'm going to talk about trust in just a second here as far as the spaces. Trust each other to open up and say, hey, without being asked, here's what we're doing. What are you doing? Okay, what do you need? I can probably provide something for that. Or I know a guy, he's over here in this other channel. He can provide you something. So that's the kind of end result we think would work well because
And
we've
that's
seen
the
it
thing
done
that points
before.
out. Yeah, that's what points out that we don't always know as much as we think we know either. And when we
Mhm.
operate on islands, when we keep ourselves sheltered from outside influence or outside conversation, sometimes we get stuck believing that what we know is all there is to know. And
Yeah.
so having a crowd, we call this the crowd, and the crowd would be all of these folks who are here in these spaces conversing with us. And even those that, like you said, are willing to respond but aren't speaking outright. Having
Mhm.
that crowd there to not only converse with, but then also to discover from, right? A lot of times we know what we know, but we don't realize that we may not know something. And so when we have these conversations and somebody points out that, hey, here's some things that every household can do to prepare for the hurricane that's coming in a couple of days.
Mhm.
Somebody out there may have some additional details to that we didn't think about. And when
Yeah.
they are prompted, because we started talking about that and they're prompted to add their 2 cents in, now we have conversations and then we're actually discovering with each other. And that's an
Mhm.
important piece to this. And that's the part that I think we enable through this method of coordination and communication that doesn't get enabled a lot of other times.
Yeah, that's that unique service because a lot of people can set up a Slack workspace anytime they want. They set up their own portal anytime they want. And I've seen hundreds of them literally, and they've all basically are the same thing. It's up to you to post what you know, and we don't discuss it, just post, 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 and we hope we get it right. So that drawing out of that discovery very often happens from start with a question and then go to a conversation. That trust factor is key. So the main thing we're looking at right now here is the 8 Arena's main space, like the mothership. It's a vetted space. We trust that everyone comes in here is part of an organized group, organization that's up to good things, that they're not just an unknown anonymous person out there in the public. They have to show that they've been connected with a group, and that they're professionally in the disaster response humanitarian aid world. By doing that in this space, people feel like they can open up, and that's what Ada Arena is about. So the dilemma was, if you wanted to get local teams involved, like for Hurricane Helene, and they want to roll in and not have to go through quite a rigorous vetting process, yet still participate, how the heck are we going to do that? We can't contaminate this area, so to speak. So here's what we did. We set up this other workspace, and you'll see my logo on the left here, Ada Arena Response. Fewer channels, right? But this is people coming in from a straight link that gets them right in here. And then all of a sudden they're here and they're introducing themselves in introductions like, hey, how you doing? Good to see you, Casper. Welcome to the crowd, right? This introductions channel, this Hurricane Francine channel, this tips channel are the same as we're seeing over here, but these things are called Slack Connect channels. That is how the technology helps us make it so that, hey, if I'm inside 8 Arena, I'm watching the actual Helene room, but there's people in here that aren't in 8 Arena. See how it says 25 external people down here? These are the people on the outside. What happens then is, if somebody shows up on the outside, they might prove to be a rock star. And they're all of a sudden like, oh yeah, you are definitely part of a group that we need to get into 8 Arena. Then ConversaCorps team, we will make sure that you get rolled into the big 8 Arena. Because in the big 8 Arena, for example, Global Watch, we're not just watching hurricanes or just the US. We're watching wildfires in Australia. We're looking at earthquakes in Thailand, or I don't know, not Thailand, but Alaska, places like that. Worldwide, global. The goal is we've got to get the teams that would respond globally to start talking about what they could do in the future after they're watching the world. And then when it comes down to do it, we're actually on the ground now responding to a real thing. That's when it starts showing up in the response side. So that's generally how we're going to do this thing is long-term discussions, relationship building here, and then in response, go, go, go. This is the day of kind of conversation. But by this time, we don't want people saying, hello, my name is, first time met the group. No. You need to have already been talking to each other in 8 Arena for months. So
Yeah,
that's
and
generally how it works.
I I believe wholeheartedly that that is the part that sets this aside and separates what we do with 8 Arena from ConversaCorps than you would find anywhere else. Social
Mhm.
media,
Yeah.
um, social media, even the asynchronous type of platforms with your Reddit and those types of platforms. Everything is just more anonymous
Mhm.
here in 8 Arena because we have the ability to vet our members for 8 Arena, and then we have the ability to connect those members with 8 Arena responders. um, we're able to provide that level of trust that you were talking about. And one thing that always strikes me as kind of an aha moment, but also is something that should just be known, is people will talk to those that they know, and people don't like to talk to those that they don't know.
Mhm.
So you kind of bridge that by saying you might not know these folks. You may have never met before, but you can rest assured that we've already done the work for you to make sure that
Mhm.
they're legitimate. And
Yeah.
that really creates a bridge there. And when we add into it that we have academics, when we add into it, we have long term researchers, folks that are working on research projects 3, 4, 5 years down the road for wildfire resilience. When we talk about these remote sensing projects that are going on and the ways that people are employing personal drones to help firefighters map fires or to help with search and rescue after a hurricane with all the flooding, it really starts to show a different effect where people are able to get comfortable speaking with those that they may not know, but who they understand are here for the same reasons.
I think
So,
another thing I want to throw out as far as like what people know and don't know is there's an interesting dynamic to sort of keep in mind between what I currently think are some of the groupings of players that are in Aid Arena, which is your researchers and your academics, as you've mentioned, Antonio. Jonesy, you've already hinted at a couple of civilian organizations with some large amount of structure and organization that know how to communicate with themselves, but not necessarily coordinate and collaborate with each other on a grander scale. And I
Yeah.
think, as a means to sort of hint at some of the other things that we're really looking to do, is with emergency management professionals. For folks who are watching this before October 4th, we're actually going to have somebody from our community who is an incident management team liaison officer talk about what value they see in what Aid Arena can provide.
Mhm.
Because again, for this was a piece of discovery for me as well. I mean, I was an EMT, so I kind of spoke emergency management language, but not at that high level, large scale
Mhm.
incident level. But to know that there is a person whose sole job is to coordinate with the non professional is not the correct term, but for lack of a better one, they are not part of the incident management team. They're not part of a firefighting team. They're
Yeah.
not PD or EMS or anything like that. They are Operation Barbecue,
Mhm.
who are like, hey, we want to help.
Local
It,
church group.
exactly.
That's one thing that we had brought up a long time. When we first started doing this, they kept coming up. You're gonna upset the cart here. You're gonna destroy the incident command system. Um, um, and so when we said, no, actually, that all stays in place. Who needs to talk to each other? Who's in charge? Who needs to support who? That's a structure that is well known and needs to stay. The question is, and how are you going to communicate with each other? And that's usually a very vague, empty blank in the doctrine. Well, whatever means you want. No, actually, there's a best way to do it. So what we're going to do is basically say, hey, we're going to be providing that forum that says, do the thing you do, but do it here, share with each other, and it'll do it better. And so it's just an improvement thing. It's a communication service using free tools that are paid for. You saw just a second ago the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. They're our sponsors. So this is a free tool for anybody who wants to use it, managed by professionals. It's got to be
yeah.
good.
And
Got to go for it.
that's something we probably should have hit on earlier, but we'll hit on now. And I'd like to just restate what you just said is that this is free. And
Mhm,
not just that the tool Slack is free, but our service is free. We're not
mhm.
asking you to come in and pay us to do this for you, pay us to help you learn how to discover each other better. We're not asking you to come in and pay a monthly fee so that we can set up channels for you. Our service is to help assist you and your organizations collaborate better, communicate more effectively, share information faster in a more effective and organized sense. All of that is us doing this for free. And so I also want to point out that ConversaCorps is a nonprofit organization. We are a nonprofit. We are not here trying to take money out of your pocket. We are here trying to help people and the planet.
That's right.
That is what we're here for.
We don't
So
make a thing except just the services. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So I do think that for now we should probably cut this a little bit short and
mhm.
go about what we have to do here to continue to support these organizations. But Jonesy, Darwin, I would really, really like to thank you guys for coming on with me, getting live with me on such short notice in an unscripted fashion to have this conversation. I just feel that it's so important that we continue to get this message out as we also help other organizations get their message to like-minded
Yeah,
organizations. So
this was
thank you
great.
guys
Got to
so
do
very
this again.
much.
Absolutely.
And for everybody that may be watching this stream now or does watch this stream later on, thank you for checking us out. Come join us, come help us help people and help the planet. And together, let's make this world a better and more organized relief space.
Yes.
So All right, guys.
Great.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And again, if you want or think you know people who can help, conversacorps.org is a good place to get started, to find out where we're at, what we're doing, and join us. We are here to take all the help we can get because, like Antonio said, our goal is to help those who are helping, and the more people that are here to do it, the better. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot. See you on the
Arena,
net.
get there.
See ya.
Good.
We're good.